Welcome to another episode of Yummy Data Science. This series is covering my class at UMass Public Health Data Science. And the module we are on, we're just starting a new module. We have finished the visualization of health data sets. That module, we talked about ggplot and a little bit about data transformation with DPLYR. And now we're going to get more into the data transformation and the wrangling of health data sets. But at this point, we are still going to be using our inpatient4viz.csv, which is a simpler file. And once we get into more exploratory data analysis, then we will bring out the heavyweight, which is the Medicare fee-for-service inpatient claims synthetic data. So let's talk about DPLYR. DPLYR is a very nice language, and it covers data transformation. And it is part of a package, a meta package or an Uber package called tidyverse. And the tidyverse set of packages were created by Hadley Wickham. And we are also following his textbook in class. It's called R for Data Science. And as you can see here, DPLYR verbs, it has these certain words. Some of them you've seen before, like transform, rename, mutate. It's based on 4 major groups, and that's based on what they operate on. And we're not going to worry too much about which group is row versus column versus groups versus tables. We're just going to think about it holistically. But the easiest thing to learn is to learn about rows and columns verbs. Okay, so in this section, what we are going to do is we are going to jump into our lab, and I am going to be taking you through some of these important verbs, and I'm also going to be showing you the pipe command. I'm going to be showing you a very powerful group functionality. And in the next video, we will cover table verbs like joining data sets. Behind the scenes, I opened up in my RStudio, I have a project file for public health class. I opened that up, and now I am ready to open up my script. So you have seen this bit of code, lines 1 through 14, many times. So we're not going to worry too much about the organization of the verbs. You can see that I am reading BeneID as character. And if you recall, if I run this, actually I'm going to do glimpse. So I don't have to double click on it. The difference between glimpse and double clicking on it or doing view is that glimpse is related to a tibble, and it will give you the format of your data in the first 5 observations. And the format is a little bit funny, like the way it gives it, but it's really grown on me, and I find it to be very useful. So you can see it has 374 rows and it has 8 columns, and you can see that these are all double. Double is a numeric format. So we don't want BeneID, column ID in numeric. We are going to read them as character. And that's simply because BeneID as a numeric has no meaning. There is no mean of patient ID or mean of claim ID. That has no meaning or value whatsoever. And then you will see that I have the amounts and the LOS, and that's fine as a double. Okay, so in this next segment, code set, which you have seen many times, 7 through 15, I'm using some verbs to transform these variables. And transform and mutate are pretty similar. Mutate is more powerful. And the distinction is that mutate can work on column variables that don't exist in the data yet. So, for example, with transform conversely, you have to have the column in the data set first. So we are operating on BeneID, and BeneID has to be present. And so you can see I'm just using transform to fix the formats at this point. And then I'm using the rename verb, which is the new name equal to the old one. And that does the trick. And you can see I'm using this pipe character. I may have mentioned this, but you might have seen a strange looking pipe character in some R code. And the reason I like this better, this is associated with base R and it works so base R comes with every single installation of R and you don't need a special library for this. And the way you configure it to recognize this pipe is you go under profile tools, and then you go under global options. And in code, you will see I'm saying use native pipe operator. Okay, that's it. And then you don't need this a magritter file that the other funny looking symbol is from. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Pipe simply means do what's on the left, and after that, do what's on the right. So if I were to read it in English, it says create a data frame called inpatient, whose data source is inpatient itself. It's okay for me to overwrite it. And then Ben ID, read that as a character, and then read claim ID as a character, and then read DRG as a character, and then read patient discharge code as a character, and then read claim IP admission type course as a character, and then rename patient discharge status code to discharged, and then rename claim IP admission type to admission, and then create a column with mutate called DRG description, which simply pastes, so puts them together, the two columns DRG and description with a separator of a little hyphen. So that's what the pipe and what the statements are using. So the second thing the next thing I want to tell you about is this very useful verb called distinct. And so, for example, if you want to see distinct values, you can say inpatient and then show me distinct values of DRG description. So if I run it, you'll be able to see that. Oops, I think I did run that. And this sometimes happen, and you just go up and you rerun the parts that you missed. So now it's given me a distinct of all the DRGs it has. Now, what if I want to do distinct on several columns? I can put them as a comma, separate them in commas in the parentheses following the distinct. So here we go. So now let's say I want to just see the data. I want to see a sample of observations. And Hi, so next we are going to be using the filter verb, which you've already seen. And you know that we want to filter the data for these DRGs. And you can see that the in is an operator in R that says filter each row if the DRG is in one of the following. And the C function is actually pretty neat because it combines things. It combines vectors, it combines lists. In our case, it's combining 3 different DRG codes. So all this is saying is, I want you to filter my rows, and if look at the DRG field, and if the DRG field is either in 182 or 181 or 180, then that's the data I want. So let's filter that. So inpatient 2 has now 223 rows. And it's very good practice as you're filtering step by step to see. And what I would like to have done before is to see that this 223 is correct, is I would have put out a distribution of DRG first and seen, how many in 182, how many in 180, how many in 80, 180, and then made sure that the math was correct. So now what I'm doing is I am using another verb called the group by. And it's a very powerful functionality. What I'm doing is by DRG, I want to know how many admits I had. I want to know what the average length of stay was. I want to know how much the average amount was. So I can use a group by. So group by simply by itself will create, and this exists in memory. This is not something tangible. It creates a data set that has been logically grouped by various DRGs. And that makes it easy for the summarize function to say, okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to compute the n. I'm going to count the rows. The n function simply computes the rows, and I'm going to call that admits. So it's going to do it by each group. And the same thing for average LOS. It's going to say, okay, I'm going to get the mean LOS, and I'm going to do it by group. I'm going to get the average amount, and I'm going to get the mean of amount by this. So what would happen if the group by statement had not been here? I'm going to leave that as a teaser. But what this will do is by each DRG, it will give you how many admits there are, what is the average length of stay, and what's the average amount charged. Okay, and that is the DRG data set. So we can open it up, and here we go. So it's got admits, it's got average length of stay, and it's got average amount. And that concludes